Hey guys, I want to welcome you to week 3 of our Missing Pieces Bible study. I'm so excited, but let me just stop and just pause for a second and just say thank you for laboring with us. We have made multiple changes during this Bible study, and yes, it is driving me crazy, but our life is big, and as we mentioned in earlier videos, we had many things going on. So this Bible study is usually on Monday nights. It's always been our Bible study, but since we have some changes going on in the background, we had to move our Monday night Bible study this week to Wednesday, and the next 3 weeks until we finish will be on Thursday, 7:30. And so hopefully, we're going to change some things around. If you're not able to make it live, you can always go back and watch the recording. That's the great thing about it. And then October 6th, Saturday morning at 8:30, we'll be on live just to kind of chat and chew, catch up, and see what a difference this Bible study is making in your life. We're doing Missing Pieces by Jennifer Rothschild. Real hope when life doesn't make sense. It is blessing my socks off. So let me just read you the beginning part because we always do that. And we are going to get started. We read about the author in our group and the introduction in our group. So you can always go back and listen to those videos. Page 6. As you begin this study, I want you to think about your favorite blanket. You know, the one that keeps you warm on a cold winter day. The one you wrap up in to watch a movie. And maybe it's that one you've had since you were a little girl. My guess is that it may be a little worn, maybe a bit tattered or frayed. Your blanket might even have some missing pieces. Now think about how your faith is like that blanket. It provides you comfort and security, yet it can also be tattered and frayed by the questions that emerge from the heartache and trials that you have endured. Each sorrow we face can create a hole in our faith, a missing piece. I want you to wrap yourself in the blanket as you begin each day in our time together. I'm going to call it your blanket of faith. Feel how it warms and protects you. That is what your faith, holds and all, does for you. And it's by Jennifer. I just want to also read at the bottom, get your download or CD of Jennifer's song, Take Me to the Cross, featured in Missing Pieces, by visiting jenniferrothschild.com//MP. So I wanted to give that to you. So we're on week 3, and there's so much going on. Before we get to week 3, we want to go back to last week, and we usually pick out a day that was really significant in our life. And that will be on page 48. And that is justice delayed or justice denied. You ever hear that statement, delayed but not denied? It's something that I always think about because I share with you guys multiple times, I think, either in this Bible study or on our prayer call. And it's also in my Simply Pray book about delayed, not denied. And so I have on my affirmation board in my room, when I get dressed in the morning, just certain things that I'm believing God for. And one of those things hasn't happened yet. And so I'm like, God, is it delayed or denied? To be continued. But let's go to day number 5. This day really hit me. And this is about justice delayed or justice denied, but it stuck out to me. Delayed, denied. I just don't know about you, but listening to the news really challenges me to ask the questions, God, do you really care? Or God, is this really fair? It just seems when the innocent suffer, horrible accidents occur, or terror prevails, a just God simply can't be superintending all this chaos. Can he really be just? What kinds of things in our world make you question God's justice? I put children being abused, accidents and violence, even serial killings. That's what I put. For ages, even God's most trusting children have wondered if God could be just. What did David ask in Psalms 82:2? How long will you be judged unjustly? What did Habakkuk ask in Habakkuk 1:3? Why do you tolerate those who are treacherous? Both men of faith asked God how long, how would he would show partiality to the wicked and allow the wicked to remain and prevail over the righteous. They each echo our confusion as we worship a just God but still see apparent injustice remain. Jesus illustrated what justice looked and felt like as he told the parable of an unjust judge. And I'm going to read this in Luke 18:2-5. This here was one of the I thought about this a lot. This was one of my favorites this week because it spoke to me. This Bible study, as I shared with you all, is just speaking to me, speaking to just some of my places where I struggle, where I'm having some hard times in some areas, where I feel like I'm suffering, going through a lot, not exactly sure why. And I think that missing pieces is helping me. It's that word, you know how you go to church and you're looking and you're saying, oh, that message was exactly for me. You know, they say, raise your hand if that message was for you. This message is for me. 18:2-5. There was a judge in a certain town who didn't fear God or respect man. And the widow in that town kept coming to him saying, give me justice against my adversary. Do you feel that way? Give me justice against my adversary. I feel that way. Verse 4, for a while he was unwilling, but later he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or respect man, yet because this widow keeps pestering me, I will give her justice so she doesn't wear me out by her persistent coming. And then the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. Will not God grant justice to his elect who cry out to him day and night? Will he delay to help them? I tell you that he will swiftly grant them justice. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find that faith on earth? I'm going to stop there. I laugh because you know how your kids pester you and they keep, mom, and they keep asking for a thing and you're like, listen, leave me alone, and you give in. That's what the judge did. So widows in the first century Palestine knew what it felt like to be totally at risk of unjust treatment. This is really interesting because we don't experience this now. It wasn't like today where a widow may have a pension, life insurance, or even a good job. They were dependent on the good graces of male relatives, people in the community. It must have felt like a pretty unjust lot in life to be a widow in those days. To add to the injustice, the judge who could grant justice ignored the widow in the story. How do you think you would have felt when the judge kept ignoring your pleas? So here's this section at the top, and I put angry, neglected, hopeless, mistreated, disappointed, and afraid. Those were all my feelings. You guys can put your own feelings there, and I'm sure there's even more. There's others. You can go on and on with it because we have a lot of emotions, right? Jesus clearly wasn't teaching about a human judge, but about God. Sometimes when our pain remains, we feel ignored by God, the only one who can help us. In the list of feelings above, circle the word you tend to feel when it seems that God has neglected you. This was deep for me. Why did you choose the words you did? So I picked hopelessness. I don't know what to do. That's how I feel. I pick angry because that's just my natural feeling. Like I'm angry by it. And then I felt neglected. I am God's child and one of his. And I just feel like because I'm his, and you know when we hear the messages that we have rights to the kingdom and we're God's children, and that he takes care of us. I think when I thought about this Bible study a lot this week, it was like that I was taught that I have rights and I'm his child and that he takes care of me. The promises, all of the promises, you know, those promises that you hold on to with everything that you have. I'm thinking about those promises and I'm like, God, what about everything that you said? And yet this doesn't feel like or look like anything that, any of your promises that are in your word. When our pain remains and our emotions are engaged because of it, we look to God and wonder how his just nature is showing up and what it feels. Why does it feel so unjust? What are we to do? The widow appealed to the judge. Have you appealed to the judge? This is where it gets good. Have you appealed to the judge? Have you appealed to God for healing or deliverance? And how has he responded to you? Here's another place where we have a section where we circle. Circle the word that best describes his response or add your own description. So the selection is silent, comforting, responsive, neglectful, harsh, confusing, or other. My 2 words is silent and comforting. I feel like he comforts me even though I'm appealing him, because there's this comfort that I know that everything is going to be okay. I just can't see that it's going to be okay. And then there's this silence, because I know that he's speaking in me, and he's even speaking through me, and he's showing me people around me that are coming to comfort me and help me. But I don't feel like the response is immediate or turning around immediate. There's a song I listen to, it's turning around for me, and it eventually turns around. But I think sometimes we look for that immediate response, like microwave. Is or was God's response thus far what you expected? And I said no. And the reason why is because, again, sometimes I think those things are just really fast. How do you tend to continue to appeal or respond to him? Sometimes I put my honest answer, I have given up, or even I have given up on ever getting a response. That is sometimes. Sometimes I feel like giving up. The widow received a response from the judge to her appeal in Luke 18:4-5. And what was it? And it says the judge was going to give her what she wanted. How does the judge's responses compare or contrast to how you feel God is responding to you? And I put different. And I'm persistently working on it. We're on page 50. In the middle of the page, if an unjust judge in the story finally renders justice, how much more will your judge, render justice to you, my friend? I get tired of being blind. This was real. I know you get tired of dealing with stress, sadness, and frustration that come with your heartache too. It's hard to patiently endure what God allows, but God promises he will render justice on your behalf. I highlighted this. Even if it feels like he isn't responding, he is and will be faithful to you. And that's a highlightable moment for this week. I'll read it again. Even if it feels like he isn't responding, he is and will be faithful to you. What does Luke 18:7-8 tell us God's response to us will be? God will grant us justice to his elect that cry out to him day and night. And that gave me such assurance, because there's times even in this week here that just passed where I shared that I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning just crying, and my emotional response of crying is to just processing everything that we've just gone through. And I haven't had moments to actually just process it all, and I was up early in the morning just thinking about everything and just began to just cry. And so when I saw this, his elect that cry out day and night, I consider myself one of his children, and that he sees every cry that I have going on. Amen. Jot down what he asked in Luke 18:8. When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? This made me do a faith check, because I know we've been talking a lot about end times and just a lot of things that are going on, perilous times, and not so much wars, but just things that are going on in our world. Will he find faith on the earth? And I want to continue to have faith. And so even right now, I think we should mount up our faith the more. Will he find faith on the earth when he returns? More importantly, will he find faith in you or me? To me, that's a bigger question. Not will we be treated fairly, but will Jesus find faith in me? Do I trust him to be just even when I don't understand it? Here's another highlightable moment. Will I be grateful for what I didn't receive and humbled by whatever God has allowed out of his just, merciful character? My friend, those are questions for which you can have the answer. You decide if God will find you faithful. Here's some true confession time from Jennifer. Like me, are you sometimes guilty of trying to control other people's business while neglecting to control yourself? Tell me how you do or don't struggle with this. And I put no, and I used to be guilty of this. And then I just realized that I need to water my own grass, take care of my own house. And sometimes I want to give opinions about what's going on in other people's lives, and then I just realize it's none of my business. Not to say that we don't go through difficult times where you may give an opinion about how something is done, but not so much worrying about others, because it's a serenity prayer. The serenity prayer. As much as we'd like to assign a formula to God to control his behavior, we cannot, or nor should we. He is I am. He is not I wish or I feel or I think. We can control what he will find in us through anger, resentment, entitlement mentality, gratefulness, or faith. Is faithfulness towards God something that is difficult for you? If so, what makes faithfulness tough for you? And I said, sometimes I'm faithful, but sometimes I want to give up. Can I be honest? Sometimes I want to give up. Please share this with your Bible study buddy. I'm sharing it with you guys, so she can pray for you and help you grow in your faith. We need each other. I'm asking you guys to keep me in prayer in that area. Sometimes I'm going through some difficult things. Maybe my view is that it's difficult. I bet you if I told you about it, you'd say, wow, that's a lot you're going through. And I don't want pity. I'm just walking through a journey in life, and I realize that this is my path, and this is the things that the Lord has me walking through. It's all going to work together for the good, but I am asking for prayer. And you guys do the same. Send me a text and send us a message and share with us what's going on with you, so that we, wherever you struggle with it, we can uplift you and pray for you too. Sometimes faith gets hard because of unanswered questions, or God's apparent unfairness, or even your own fatigue. Here's a good one: because you've carried a burden way too long. Sister, God's grace can empower you to remain faithful. I'm assured by that. Don't just sit despondently in the back of the plane when God has positioned you in first class to soar over your circumstances. I want to read that to you again. Don't just sit despondently in the back of the plane when God has positioned you in first class to soar over your circumstances. Ask him for grace, humble yourself, and receive it to remain faithful. The psalmist Asaph, who was visited briefly near the end of the day 4, confessed his feet were slipping off the rock of faith when he saw the prosperity of the wicked. See Psalm 73, 2-3. We too can get wobbly in our faithfulness because we, like Asaph, see how mean people seem to have easier lives, or like the vineyard workers, we don't receive what we think is fair. Complete the following according to James 5:11. I am blessed when I endure. The outcome of God's dealings with me will always be compassion and merciful. And that's on page 52. James reminds us that those who endure are blessed. My friend, hang in there with me. Let's endure until the day we bow before his throne, and don't give up. We did our Bible study last year before Christmas, and it's a woman who doesn't quit. And I know the enemy wants us to quit. And I read in my Bible this week, and I went to this devotional, and it was about the story of Job, and how the Lord allowed things to happen with Job, and how the Lord was testing his character through it all. And we may be living a Job experience. It was like this light bulb moment went off for me, and I was like, God, this is what's going on. That sometimes I share with one of my girlfriends that sometimes I don't want to even share things with her because I think it's too heavy. I even watched a video today about being strong, and how sometimes when we share things it seems so heavy, and the person even on the other side, the receiver, is like, man, you're going through a lot, and I don't know if I can carry you through this. And so just walking through some of the things, just like Job, one of the things that assures us is that in the end of Job's story is God gave him double for his trouble. And so if I can leave that for you today, to don't give up, and to remember that a woman doesn't quit. Those are my 5 challenges in the back from a woman who doesn't quit. It says, accept the assignment of refinement, right? Follow through despite how she feels. Stay open to the movement of God. Give others what she needs and moves forward in faith. I've always kept that up there because it was the thing that helped me, continually helps me, and I got to see it. Let's close out. This week's question was, God, are you fair? What's your answer? My answer is no, and thank you, Jesus. A piece of encouragement from Paul. There is reserved for me in the future the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on that day. And not only to me, but to all those who have loved his appearing. And that's 2 Timothy 4-8. So that was one of our favorite days from week 2. I want to read you just a couple other things, and then I'm going to give you some questions, and then we will go through our week 3. This is our week 3. You're already in the midst of it. But last week, it was just one of those weeks that really hit us for some of the things that we had going on. And I wanted to go back and give you that. Here's on page 37. I wanted to read this to you. We may not always understand God's motives, his methods, or meaning behind his actions either, but we see his faithfulness to his word. He is just in the way he responds to each of his children. Here's the thing to think about. It is not in mercy then that sorrow is allotted unto us. And so that's to think about. But it's his motive, his methods, and his meaning. And so I wanted to read that to you. On page 53, we're in week 3. You should be on day 3. And we'll come back next Thursday. And we'll be back in the midst of our week. But here's some conversation questions for you on page 53. Share with the group a time when God did not answer a prayer in the manner you desired. How did he administer grace in that question? And you can do this in your private time. Explain the beauty behind the truth that God does not give us what we deserve. I'm going to go back there, but I'm going to go to 3. How could you combat the temptation to think that you should have every want met in just the way you desire? When I thought about this study this week and this past week and going through grace and how grace is undeserved favor and thinking about the things that I do deserve. You know how sometimes you're in prayer and you're going back and you're thinking, you're always repenting over the things, even if you've asked for it years ago. Because sometimes the enemy just flashes back. You remember this happened, and you go back to those places. If I think back to what I really actually deserve, the beauty behind the truth of that God does not give us what we deserve, then I thank God that even if it seems as if we're going through difficult times, he's not giving us what we deserve. Because some of us have walked through some really horrible, sinful things, and God is still fair, right? So I just want to thank you guys. I hope that you are enjoying this Bible study. It is a lot to consume, but it's chewable and it's doable, and it's a changer, a life changer. And we'll be back on Thursday. I know that's in the midst of the week is almost over, but hopefully you're getting up and you're spending that private time and quiet time with the Lord, and just going through these Bible studies. And of course, as we said, we had to change our schedule, but we hope that you will bear with us through this. And then there's a lot of schedule changes. We had to change our prayer call after 6 years from Saturday to Monday. We had this Bible study on Monday. So as we change, we're just going to go with it and see what happens, because sometimes when you make changes, you never know what's going to happen. And that very thing where you were waiting for some things to happen, it might just be a better schedule. We send out a survey, and some of you may not have said anything, but this may be the very thing that we need to catapult into another area. So we want to thank you guys. Remember, we're on week 3. So meet us here next week, next Thursday. We'll go through week 3, and then we'll be on week 4, and we'll get into a little of week 4. But we want to thank you for joining us for this Bible study. We won't be long. We're going to cut these sessions. Hopefully you can join us on Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. We're going to do like a coffee chat and chew and just kind of go over and see how you feel. Hopefully you can join us live just to see how you feel. What's this Bible study doing for you? Is it making you realize some things? Sometimes the different Bible studies are just for where you are in that space and place and time. But I knew that even if you are here right now and this is just not your time for Missing Pieces, maybe you'll come back and you'll be like, man, this is the Bible study that I so needed. I remember thinking about Unstuck and saying, man, I needed that at that time, and maybe I couldn't get through it and I need to go back. And that's just how life is. So we want to thank you guys for joining us for Bible study this week. Hopefully you have an amazing night and you got a lot out of this week. Remember, it was, just so I can give you day 5, just to recap, just